In 1999, he saved 2 little girls and disappeared. 20 years later, he's on trial for a crime he didn't commit until those same girls walk in and speak 5 words that change everything. What happened next will shock entire room forever. It was midnight in rural Georgia in the year 1999. The kind of stormy night where the rain didn't just fall, but lashed against the earth with fury. Where thunder cracked across the sky and the swollen rivers churned like living things. On that night, under a black sky and over a slick, narrow bridge, a car lost control. Its tires skidded, screeching against wet pavement before it broke through the guardrail and plunged into the dark waters of Blackwater Creek. The current swallowed it fast, the headlights flickering out like dying stars as the car began to sink. There was no one else on the road. No passing drivers, no police sirens, no witnesses. If fate had left things as they were, the story might have ended there. 2 little lives pulled under the surface, erased in silence. But fate had something else in mind. Because at that exact moment, a young man named Marcus Johnson was walking home after finishing a brutal double shift at the small-town garage where he worked. Just 24 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, and weary from long hours of labor, Marcus was the kind of man most people didn't notice. He kept his head down, paid his dues, and moved through life quietly, never asking for thanks or recognition. But on that stormy night, as he trudged down the dark road, collar pulled tight against the rain, he heard something that froze him in place, the faint, desperate sound of screams.
Without hesitation, without even thinking of his own safety, Marcus sprinted toward the noise. He reached the bridge just in time to see the ripples spreading outward on the water and the faint glow of a sinking car. The current was violent, the rain relentless, but Marcus didn't pause. He dropped his jacket, took a breath, and dove headfirst into the raging creek. The water was ice cold, the kind of cold that claws at your lungs and threatens to steal your strength. But Marcus pushed forward, fighting the current as he swam toward the fading lights. With his hands, he felt the metal of the car. The windows were locked, the doors sealed by pressure. Inside, through the glass, he could just make out 2 small figures, children, terrified, their hands pressed against the window. Marcus's heart pounded. He grabbed a rock from the riverbed, lifted it high, and smashed the glass with every ounce of strength he had left. The window shattered. Water rushed in. Marcus reached inside and pulled free the first child, a small girl no older than 6. He kicked hard, dragging her upward, and placed her on the roof of the sinking car before diving back down. Time was running out. With burning lungs, Marcus forced himself through the broken window again and found the second child, another girl, a twin. Her small arms clung to him as he pulled her free.
With both children clinging to his shoulders, Marcus fought against the current, pushing upward until finally they broke the surface. Gasping, coughing, struggling against exhaustion, he dragged them to the shore, collapsing on the muddy bank. The little girls cried, shivering in the cold night, but they were alive. They were safe. And as they coughed water from their lungs and held on to each other, Marcus whispered the only words he could manage, his voice steady despite the storm, "Hold on, I've got you." By the time the flashing lights of police cars pierced the darkness, Marcus was gone. All that remained was a soaked, mud-stained jacket left behind on the bank, a silent marker of the man who had risked everything and asked for nothing. The girls, Emily and Sarah Thompson, survived that night. Their parents called the rescuer a hero, but no one knew his name. The newspapers ran a small story that faded after a week. Life in the town moved on, but Emily and Sarah never forgot. They never forgot the storm, the water, or the man with the gentle voice who had lifted them from the darkness and carried them back into the light. They were just 6 years old, too young to remember his face, too young to give him a name, but old enough to remember his words, words that would echo in their hearts for the rest of their lives. "Hold on, I've got you."
20 years have passed since that fateful day, and the world has changed in ways both seen and unseen. In a small southern town far away from the noise of big cities and the promises of modern progress, Marcus Johnson, now 44 years old, lives a quiet life. He is not a man of wealth or fame, not someone who seeks the spotlight or thrives on recognition. Instead, Marcus has built a modest existence, one centered around hard work, humility, and giving back in the only way he knows how. He owns a small auto repair shop at the edge of town, a place where the smell of oil and grease mixes with the sound of old gospel music that hums from a dusty radio in the corner. People bring their cars to him not only because he is skilled with his hands, but because he is known for being fair and honest. He charges little, sometimes nothing at all if he knows the family is struggling. To the teens in the community, Marcus is more than just the man who fixes cars. He is a mentor, a steady presence, someone who offers guidance when the rest of the world seems too chaotic. He teaches them about engines, but more importantly, he teaches them about responsibility, respect, and the value of walking the straight path, even when life tempts you otherwise. But all it takes is one night, one terrible, tragic night, for everything to crumble. A local convenience store is robbed under the cover of darkness. The clerk is forced to the floor. A gun is raised. A shot is fired. The store owner collapses, bleeding on the tiles, while the masked figure rushes into the shadows. Chaos spreads quickly. People whisper. Fear runs wild. And when the police arrive, they do what they have always done when pressure builds and answers are scarce. They look for someone to blame. A witness steps forward, trembling and unsure, claiming they saw something. In the haze of panic, their memory twists details into shapes that can never be undone. They say it was a tall black man in a hoodie who ran from the scene. That is all the police need. It is not evidence, it is not certainty, but it is enough. Within hours, officers arrive at Marcus Johnson's home. They place him in handcuffs in front of his neighbors, ignoring his protests, ignoring his confusion, ignoring the years he has spent building a reputation for kindness and integrity. To them, he is not Marcus the mentor, Marcus the mechanic, or Marcus the man who saved lives decades ago. To them, he is simply a suspect, and a convenient one at that. There is no DNA tying him to the crime. There is no weapon found in his possession. The clothes in his closet are ordinary, nothing like what the witness described. Still, the system does not slow down. It never does. Fear pushes it forward and bias shapes its direction. The prosecutor wastes no time in painting Marcus as a dangerous man, a lifelong suspect, someone who has always walked on the wrong side of the law. They twist his past, taking small details and inflating them into patterns that never existed. They suggest his quiet life was nothing more than a cover, a mask that hid darker intentions. The jury listens, wide-eyed, their doubts swallowed by the story being spun before them. Logic fades. Prejudice whispers in their ears. The verdict becomes clearer long before the gavel strikes. Marcus sits silently through it all, his hands folded, his eyes heavy but not broken. He has lived long enough to know that sometimes truth is not enough. Sometimes character does not matter. Sometimes a man can spend his whole life trying to do right and still be crushed under the weight of lies and assumptions. When the judge finally looks down at him, preparing to sentence him to life in prison, Marcus rises to his feet. The courtroom is still. Reporters lean forward. Families hold their breath. He speaks not with anger, not with bitterness, but with a calm that cuts through the air like a blade. His voice does not tremble. It does not rise. It carries the weight of a man who knows his worth, even when the world refuses to see it. "I've spent my life trying to do right," he says slowly, each word deliberate, each syllable carrying years of struggle and sacrifice. "I didn't do this." The silence that follows is deafening. His words hang in the air, unshaken, unchallenged, but also unbelieved. The jury looks away. The prosecutor smirks. The judge's expression remains cold and unmoved. And just like that, Marcus Johnson, once a symbol of hope, once a good man who gave everything he had to others, is dragged into the shadows of a system designed to forget him. No one believes him, not yet.
The courtroom is heavy with silence, a silence that feels alive, pressing down on every shoulder and weighing on every chest. The air is thick with tension, and the people inside, neighbors, townsfolk, strangers, all gathered together, wait for the gavel to strike. The judge, stern-faced and unmoved, clears his throat, ready to deliver a sentence that will decide the rest of Marcus Johnson's life. The clerk shuffles papers. The prosecutor leans forward, pen tapping against the table with smug anticipation. Marcus sits quietly, his eyes lowered, his hands folded, steady but tired, waiting for the words he knows are coming. And then, just as the judge opens his mouth to speak, something happens. The heavy wooden doors at the back of the courtroom swing open with a suddenness that startles everyone. Heads turn, murmurs ripple through the room. Two women walk in, their heels striking against the floor, the sound echoing in the chamber like a drumbeat. They are in their early 30s, dressed in professional clothes, composed but carrying a fire in their eyes. They move with a quiet determination, the kind of resolve that demands to be seen, the kind that commands attention even in a room thick with judgment. They do not wait to be acknowledged. They step forward, united, their presence itself an interruption of destiny.
The twins return. The bailiff tenses. The prosecutor rises, instantly objecting, his voice sharp, accusing them of disrupting official proceedings. The judge raises a hand, silencing the room. There is hesitation in his eyes, a flicker of uncertainty, and then, against expectation, he allows it. The women stand at the center of the courtroom, facing the bench, facing the jury, and most of all, facing Marcus Johnson. And at that moment, the weight of 20 years begins to unravel. Emily Thompson steps forward first. Her hands tremble, and though her voice is unsteady, her words carry the force of memory long buried but never forgotten. 20 years ago, she begins, her eyes scanning the courtroom, locking on Marcus. I drowned. I was underwater, trapped, scared, freezing, and then a man pulled me out. He held me. He carried me to safety. And in the middle of the chaos, when my lungs burned and the world was fading, I heard his voice. He said, "I've got you." Those words saved me. That moment saved me, and I never, ever forgot his voice. The crowd stirs. Whispers break out. Jurors shift uncomfortably in their seats. Even the judge leans forward, his stern expression softening ever so slightly. The twins return, and then Sarah steps forward. Her sister's words have steadied her. Her voice is stronger, though lined with emotion. "We spent years trying to find him," she says, her gaze sweeping across the room before landing on Marcus. "We had no name, no photo, just a memory, just a voice. For 2 decades we searched. For 2 decades we wondered if he was even real. And then last week we saw his face on the news. We saw the trial, the headlines, the accusations. And in that moment when he spoke in court, I recognized him. I recognized his voice. The same voice that pulled us out of the dark. The same voice that promised we'd be safe." The room is silent now. Every eye is fixed on the twins. The prosecutor fidgets nervously, his confidence cracking. The judge does not interrupt. The jury listens, riveted as the story unfolds like destiny itself. And then Sarah turns fully toward Marcus. Her words soften, but her conviction only deepens. Her eyes glisten, and her voice carries not only memory, but gratitude, loyalty, and an unshakable truth. "You saved us when no one else could," she says, her voice breaking slightly with emotion. "You risked your life for two little girls you didn't even know. You gave us our future, and now we have to save you." The words strike like thunder, reverberating through every corner of the room. Marcus lifts his head, his eyes meeting theirs, disbelief and recognition colliding. For the first time in weeks, perhaps in years, there is light in his expression. The room is transfixed, caught between past and present, as fate writes itself anew in front of them all. The 5 words that changed everything. Part 1. The courtroom was silent. A silence so heavy that even the faint hum of the ceiling fan seemed intrusive. Every eye in the room was locked on Sarah. She sat at the witness stand, her fingers nervously gripping the edge of the wooden railing. But her voice, when it finally came, was not trembling. It was clear, firm, and steady, as though every ounce of doubt and fear had finally melted away in that one decisive moment. She turned her head slowly. First, she looked at the judge, his expression stern and unyielding. Then she shifted her gaze toward the jury, 12 strangers whose decision could mean the difference between freedom and a life wasted behind bars. And then, after a pause long enough to make the air in the room feel unbearably thick, she spoke. 5 words. Only 5. Yet those words carried more weight than hours of testimony, more power than endless arguments from lawyers on either side. Sarah said, with absolute certainty, "He's not the man you're looking for." The room stirred. The tension snapped like glass shattering. Gasps rippled across the rows of onlookers, and a low murmur rose from the back of the courtroom. The defense attorney sat up straighter, eyes wide with disbelief. Marcus, seated at the defense table, froze completely. For weeks, for months, he had prayed for someone, anyone, to speak the truth. And now it was happening in front of everyone. But Sarah wasn't done. Her voice, gaining strength with every word, cut through the noise like a blade. "The real suspect," she continued, her eyes never leaving the jury, "was someone who worked at the store. He wasn't a stranger passing through. He knew the place. He knew the schedule. He had motive. He was fired just last month. His name is Derek Mills." The name hit the room like thunder. The prosecution stammered, caught off guard. Papers shuffled. The judge banged his gavel once, calling for order, but it was too late. The room had erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks. Cameras clicked, and whispers turned into full-blown commotion. "Derek Mills?" someone repeated in disbelief. Within hours, the police moved. They checked the lead, they tracked down Derek Mills, and what they found erased every lingering shadow of doubt. Hidden in the back of his car, wrapped in a blanket, was the weapon. The same gun that had been used in the crime. The serial number matched perfectly. It was undeniable. Derek Mills was the man they had been searching for all along. The news spread like wildfire. By evening, headlines flashed across every local channel. New evidence clears Marcus Johnson. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse, some cheering, others shaking their heads in shock that justice had come so close to making a devastating mistake. Back in the courtroom, the judge looked over his glasses, his voice heavy with authority, but touched with something more, a rare human sincerity. He leaned forward, eyes sweeping across the room, and then he spoke words that would be remembered for years. "Today," the judge said slowly, his voice echoing in the stunned silence, "justice didn't just happen, it was returned." Marcus closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt the weight lift from his chest. His shoulders sagged, not with defeat, but with relief. He was free. Not because luck had intervened,
not because the system had suddenly shifted in his favor, but because someone brave enough to tell the truth, had finally spoken up. And Sarah, sitting on the stand, felt tears sting her eyes. She knew the risk she had taken. She knew how different the day could have ended. But in that moment, as Marcus turned to look at her with silent gratitude, she realized something else. Those 5 words had not only saved a man's life, they had restored faith in something far greater, the truth. And with that, the gavel struck. The case was closed.
1 year had passed since that unforgettable day in the courtroom, and Marcus's life looked nothing like it had before. The man who once stood on the edge of losing everything now stood tall, not as a victim of injustice, but as a symbol of hope. His small garage, once a struggling corner shop where he quietly fixed cars, had transformed into something much greater. The community now knew it as Second Chance Motors, a name that carried a story, a meaning, and a promise. For Marcus, it wasn't just about repairing engines anymore. It was about repairing lives. Each time he opened the shop doors, he wasn't just inviting customers in, he was welcoming people into a place built on resilience and redemption. And the impact stretched far beyond the garage walls. Emily and Sarah, the 2 women whose lives he had saved decades ago and who, in turn, had saved him, carried forward the flame of justice. Together they launched a foundation dedicated to helping those who, like Marcus, had been wrongfully accused or forgotten by the system. Their foundation became a refuge for the unheard, giving second chances to those society had almost buried. The story of Marcus wasn't just retold in court transcripts or news headlines. It became a living testament to how one act of kindness could ripple through time, shaping the destinies of others in ways no one could have predicted.
Now, Marcus spent his days not just as a mechanic, but as a mentor. Young kids from all backgrounds, many of them standing at the crossroads of life, unsure of which path to take, found guidance in him. They looked at Marcus not just as a man who fixed cars, but as someone who fixed hope. He spoke to them in a way that was simple yet powerful, and his message always carried the same weight. One good act can echo for decades. He would tell them that courage isn't about not feeling fear, but about acting in spite of it. He would remind them that strength is not measured by what you can lift, but by what you can carry in your heart for others. And most of all, he showed them, by his own story, that kindness has the power to come full circle in ways you may never expect. At one of the community events where families gathered to celebrate progress, unity, and second chances, a small boy tugged at Marcus's sleeve. His eyes were wide with curiosity as he looked up at the man who had become a local legend. "Were you scared?" the boy asked softly, "when you jumped into the water to save those girls?" The crowd around them fell silent, waiting to hear how Marcus would respond. Marcus paused, a gentle smile spreading across his face. And in that moment, every wrinkle, every scar, and every line told the story of a life lived through struggle and grace. He leaned down so the boy could see his eyes clearly, and with a calm, steady voice he said, "Yeah, I was scared. I was terrified, but I knew someone needed me. And sometimes," he added, his voice carrying warmth and certainty, "that's enough." His answer was simple, yet it carried the weight of decades. The truth that bravery is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act when fear is strongest. The applause that followed wasn't loud or overwhelming, but it was filled with sincerity. As the evening drew to a close, the camera of life seemed to pull back, capturing the essence of everything that had unfolded over the years. On the wall of Marcus's shop, in a frame carefully hung with pride, was an old photograph of 2 little girls, their innocent smiles frozen in time. Beneath it, in bold letters, one line summed up the story better than 1,000 words could ever do. "You saved them. They saved you.
Justice came full circle. That message, written not just in ink, but in the hearts of everyone who knew the story, stood as a reminder that kindness has no expiration date. It travels forward, through years, through generations, until it comes back, sometimes when you least expect it, sometimes in the very moment you need it most. And for Marcus, the man who once thought his life was over, it meant that his one act of courage had not only saved 2 lives long ago, but had also saved his own in the end.
I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe my channel, and also share this video with your family and friends. Let's see the view of weather looking so great. There are many clouds in the sky because today weather lives life enjoyable, and I make video for you. If this video give you a lesson, please like and share this video with your family and friend, because they give lesson from my video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.